Firefighters' children think they're going to grow up to fight fires. If you grew up on a farm, you probably at one point thought that you're going to be a farmer. I, from the ages of 13 to 23, thought that I was going to become a secret agent. My dad had gotten into military intelligence right out of college, right when the Vietnam War was starting to heat up. And he traveled around for a while, met my mother in Mexico, had me in Austria. He transitioned out of the military and started working for one of those alphabet agencies in Virginia. And I didn't know that until I was around 13 years old, when he sat me down on my birthday and he told me what he did for a living. But see, he couldn't tell me everything because it was a secret. He couldn't tell my mother what he did for a living. He couldn't, when we met people at parties, he couldn't share how his day at work was, because if he did, there's a high chance that people would die. And people did. My father's good friend was assassinated in Namibia by a roadside bomb while he was on assignment. My father's other friend was abducted in Tehran. And so my father bore the signs of those secrets on his face. They carved lines into his cheeks and made his eyes heavy-lidded. And he grew bitter from having to keep all of those secrets in. And yet, when I found out what he did, that just added to the romance. I started reading books by Tom Clancy and Jean Le Carré, and reading about men who skulked around in the shadows, who lived lives of moral ambiguity in moments of heart-stopping danger. And I thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. So I'm in college, and I'm working at this sort of menial insurance job. And I was living at the time with a young woman who was very political and very leftist. She was the sort of person who chained herself to things in protest of other things, and wore tie-dye, and introduced me to the music of Woody Guthrie, and had very strong convictions about U.S. government policy, domestically and abroad. And so, for a while, that dream that I'd had of following my father's footsteps into the intelligence services subsided. And then I got laid off from my crappy insurance job, and we couldn't pay the bills. And I don't know if you've ever had an eviction notice tacked up to your door. I don't know if you've ever had the lights turned off by the electric company, but it is really a powerfully not good feeling. And so I was really desperate to find something to do. And into that moment rode, like a knight on a white horse, an old friend of my father's. Someone whose career he'd helped get started over 20 years ago in Europe at the height of the Cold War. And now she was a very senior person in the CIA. And she said, well, you know, Kevin, if you wanted to come to work for us, I could fast track you through. You wouldn't even have to fill out the big tome-like application that most federal employee candidates have to fill out. You could just fill out that one sheet, and we just get you right in. And so that application lay on the kitchen table. And I was torn, because it was my dream. That's what I wanted to do from the time I was 13 years old. That's all that I thought about. And I was jobless, and we couldn't pay the bills. And here it was, just staring me right in the face. But at the same time, I was thinking about my girlfriend at the time with whom I was living, and how strongly politically convicted she was, and how she would be disapproving if I took a job working for this sort of, the military-industrial complex. And I was conflicted. And then she said, "It's okay. If you want to do this, it's okay." And so then I was faced with a real quandary. Do I pursue my childhood dream? Or do I suffer poverty for the sake of political conviction? And I would sit down at the table and I would pick up my pen to fill it out, and I'd put the pen back down and I'd walk away. And the bills would keep coming in. And that twist in the gut that happens when you're broke, not poor, but broke, that would just settle in my stomach, and I would look at the application again. And then finally, one evening, I plucked up that one-page application, and I crumpled it in my hand, and I threw it away. I didn't throw it away because of U.S. intervention in Central America, nor did I throw it away because of our funding of guerrilla insurgencies and our support for right-wing tyrants and panderers. No. I threw that application away because I thought of my father, and I thought of how bitter and how depressed he always was, that he had to live in the shadows and never talk about what he did 60, 80 hours a week to his wife, to his children, and to his friends. That one act, that one thing that I did, that throwing away of that application that changed my life forever. I did not know what my other options were. I was underemployed and undereducated and broke as shit. But I resolved that my life would not be lived in the shadows. That my walk would be in the light. And that my path, whatever it was, would be righteous. And I have strayed from that path, and I've stumbled on that path, and I've left that path, and I've fallen on that path. And many times have I second-guessed that one thing, that one decision that I made. And many times have I looked over my shoulder and thought about what might have been. But I've always turned back around and kept on going. And I have never turned back. Welcome to Full Circle Storytelling.